Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bob Murphy. We're going to have, let me see where this is here. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. I'm Bob Murphy. I'm a systems administrator from right here in New Jersey. I've been a desktop Linux user for about 20 years, a little more now, actually. And just so you have your expectations right for this presentation, there will be no cat pictures, there will be no memes, because this is a text utility. And as I thought was appropriate for this presentation, this entire demonstration will be done in text. So there's going to be a lot of text here, but I'm thinking this will be useful enough to make this enjoyable for you. So GNU Screen is what's called a terminal multiplexer. What that basically does is it works kind of like a window manager for a single either SSH or console session. It's surprisingly useful. It sounds horrible, but it's surprisingly useful. It makes working either in an SSH session or on a console much easier, much more manageable, and has a lot of benefits to it. The other thing is it's part of the GNU project. So this is part of the Free Software Foundation's GNU project, which means a couple of things. One, it's all free software. It's all very available, just about any Linux distribution, it's been ported to nearly every system. So it's ubiquitous and it's free software, so it can't be taken away. And it's got some degree of transparency. So there's a degree of trust because the code is all open. So just to get started with it, and this first thing I'm going to demonstrate how we start it, and I'm going to demonstrate one feature that made this the killer feature for me for this program. So we're going to start screen. And when you start screen, you just type screen. You can just type screen on its own, but we're going to make it a little bit nicer. We're going to do screen-s and a name. So that way we can look at the list later and pick out our individual version of screen. And then what we're going to do is, first we're going to SSH into another server, and then we're going to start screen there because that's the environment we typically do it in. So we're going to SSH into a server, and then we're going to start an application. So I'm going to show this right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to SSH to what happens to be a Fedora machine. So now we're SSH'd in. What we're going to do is we're going to do screen-s and then TCF demo. And you're going to see it's not going to look like anything spectacular. It's just going to look like we started another bash shell, which is essentially what we've done. But let me show you the first feature. So if we start an application, now you'll probably do something a little more intensive than just HTOP. But normally, if you're running an application and all of a sudden you lose your network connection, or you close your laptop and it goes to sleep, what usually happens? Usually when you do that, you lose all of your work, you lose your place. You can go log back in, but you've lost all of your work at that point. But we're running screen. So I'm going to simulate losing our connection by just closing the window abruptly. I say, oh my goodness, you have stuff running. Yeah, I know. So we've closed that out. So now we've lost our connection. Let me go back to the slides. So normally if you lose your connection, you lose everything. But we've run screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to reattach to that screen session. The way this actually works is now that screen session is still running in the background of our SSH session. Even though SSH has been terminated, screen hasn't been terminated. Screen is still running. So what we're going to do is we're going to reattach with screen-r. Let's go back. We're going to SSH back in. I'm going to make this bigger so it's easier to see. If I go too big, some of the other stuff doesn't work right. So normally this is what you'd get. It's like, okay, great. I've SSH'd back in, but my work is gone. Everything is done. But what we're going to do is we're going to do screen-r, which is reattach. And you'll see HTOP is still running just like nothing ever happened. So if we had kicked off a big backup job, a big database issue, all of that would still be running in the background. So for me, this was the big feature that made the whole program worthwhile. And then as time went on, I found all these other features that were great in it. But this was the one that did it for me. So very useful. We can reattach our session, picks right up where you left off. Super handy. I don't know if anybody else SSHs into servers on a regular basis, but this makes it much, much more convenient in that regard. So how do we install Screen? Now, I primarily have Linux distributions on here. So I'm going to go through those, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Windows and the Mac stuff. So on Red Hat or older Fedora systems, you do yum install Screen. On newer Fedora systems, you do DNF install Screen. Oddly enough, on new versions of Red Hat, they've stopped including Screen in the regular repos. You have to install the EPEL repositories to get that to work, because they are focusing on a different program, and I'll talk about that later too. But on older versions of Red Hat, that would be 7 and older, it's in the regular repositories. In Debian, Ubuntu, or Mint, so any of the Debian-based distributions, you do sudo apt-get, or just apt these days, install Screen, and it's in the regular package repositories. In FreeBSD, and presumably the install is similar on other BSDs. I didn't install it on all of them. I just did FreeBSD. If you do cd user ports sysutil Screen, and then you do make install clean, it installs, it asks you a few prompts, and then it installs Screen for you. Both Slackware and OpenSUSE had Screen in the default install. Now, I don't have Windows or Mac on these slides. On the Mac, you can use brew to install Screen. So I don't have the command off the top of my head, but it's part of the brew packaging infrastructure. Under WSL on Windows, you can install it. I installed it on a Windows machine with WSL. You do have to dig around on the internet a little bit. There's an environment variable that has to be set in order to make Screen run properly. So just so you know, you can't just do, like if you have Ubuntu under WSL, you can do sudo apt-get install Screen, but it doesn't work right out of the box with that. And there's also a version of Screen packaged for Windows, but I've never installed that personally, but it's available. I don't know how exactly it would work like in a PowerShell though. So how do we control Screen? So now when we're in Screen and we're just looking at it, it looks like any other shell program. So how do we tell Screen that we want a command to go to it as opposed to the program that's running in the foreground? Well, there's a command key, Control A is your main modifier for Screen. Basically, when you hit Control A, you're notifying Screen the next keystroke is for you, so that it then takes the attention to Screen. So I'm going to demonstrate that quickly. So we've got HTOP here. Ordinarily, if I hit keys, they're going to go to top. But if I do Control A and then the question mark, it brings up the help screen for Screen, the help page. And it gives us a lot of the commands that are on here. We're going to talk about a few of these, but it does a lot of stuff I don't even get into, frankly. So there's a lot of keys. There are a lot of functions this does. This is one of the ways you can get to just a quick help screen on this stuff. So we're going to talk about some of this in a few minutes, but now we're back to our program we were. So Control A is what sort of wakes up Screen and says, you need to listen to the next keystroke because that's going to be for you. Control A and then a command. Okay, now let's get into where Screen really begins to shine here, other than the disconnect reconnect, which I really like. You can have more than one window within your Screen session. So when you hit Control A C for create, it creates another window for us to use, another shell session within that same SSH session. So if we go over here, we do Control A C, it brings up another window. And I'm going to start another program. I'm going to start Midnight Command. And I'm going to do Control A C again. Okay, see, I keep opening up windows. I'm just going to do LS. And Control A C again. And I'm going to do IRSSI, which is an IRC program, just something to put up on the screen there. So we've started 4 programs within our single SSH session, which is kind of handy. So you can then change between them. So if you want to switch between sessions by number, if you know the number of the session you want to use, you do Control A and the number of the session, starting with 0. So 0 is our HTOP that we started with, and then it proceeds through the other programs. You can also browse through them in sequence, either forwards or backwards, by doing Control A N for next and Control A P for previous. So you can just step through them in order. So I'm going to go over there. So we're on 4 right now. If I do Control A P, it's going to step back to our screen that has LS on it. And if I do Control A P again, it's going to pop up Midnight Commander. And if I hit Control A P again, it's going to bring us to HTOP. So it's basically flipping between these screens. It's as if we had a window manager with 4 SSH sessions in either tabs or something else, and we're just flipping between them. But it does it all in text, so we don't need to be running a graphical environment to have that kind of rich, multiple programs running, each in their own space. Now, my example before where I just quit out of the shell window, that's not always, if you know you're going to be detaching your session, like if you know you're going to be closing your laptop and walking away, it's better to detach your screen session if you know that a disconnect is coming. And you do that with Control A and then the D key to detach. So basically, that way screen knows that session has been cut off. Sometimes SSH doesn't cut off cleanly, and like screen doesn't know that you're not still there, you're just being quiet. So if you're going to walk away from a screen session, you know you're going to pick it back up later, Control AD is a cleaner way to exit out of that. Because then you could do Control AD. Here, I'll demonstrate. So say we're in everything, we could do Control AD, and you can see that it says detached from, and it gives the PID of that, and you can see our name, TCF demo. So if we go to reattach to it, we can do screen-ls shows us all the screen sessions that are running on this system. And since there's only one, we can do screen-r and just pick up where we left off. If there were more than one screen session running on this machine, we could pick it out by name or by the ID number. But now we've reattached to that session. So let's go back. Split screens. Now, unfortunately, we're running our screen at kind of a lower resolution, so it's a little bit tougher. Maybe I'll lighten it up a little bit. But we can split the screen in 2 different ways. Control AS gives us a horizontal split screen. So it splits it so you have top and bottom. And then Control A and the pipe key, which on my keyboard is above the enter key. You hit Shift and the / key. It's the pipe, and that gives us a horizontal split. So let me demonstrate a little of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make these characters a little bit smaller so that the split screens are actually meaningful. So I'm going to shrink this down a little. Okay, so I'm going to do Control A, capital S, and see that split our screen to a separate screen, a separate window on the top, separate window on the bottom. Now, to get between these 2 windows, we do Control A, tab. Now you can see my flashing cursor is in the bottom, but there's nothing there. It's a blank window. What we can do now is we can do Control A and a number and pull up any one of those sessions we had running before. So I'm going to do Control A 2, and it pulls up our blank bash window, which we had LS in before. So we can put different things in there. Now let's say we want to split it again. I'm going to do Control A and then the pipe. The pipe now has split that bottom window into 2 vertical windows. So I'm going to do Control A tab again. I'm going to do Control A 1 and bring up our Midnight Commander window, which is too small. This window is really too small to use that meaningfully, but you can see we have 3 distinct programs split up in our one session. So if you're trying to edit a file and you need to look at something else in another file, this could be really handy. Or if you need to, change, if you're doing manual changes on a web page, you can also see what the results are, in the logs on another screen. So I've been talking a lot. Any questions so far?
Doesn't look like it, unless anybody.
Nothing yet?
Yeah, unless anybody wants to drop one right now, or they can speak also. So far, so good.
I figure this is a good spot to answer questions. Usually the split screens elicit a few questions. Nothing yet?
In a new window, can you then start a new shell?
Sure. So if we were to, I'm going to do Control A, capital X. I'm going to get rid of one. Then I'm going to do Control A, pipe again, which should bring up a blank window. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
In a new window, can you then start a new shell?
Yes, absolutely. I just forgot what the question was. So if I do
Okay.
Control A, remember to create a new session, it's Control A C. When I'm in a blank window like that and I just want something new, Control A C brings us a new prompt. So there's our new shell right there. That's a good question.
Sounds good.
And when I say a good question, it means it's one I had the answer to. So, which is not always the case. So I'm going to close a few of these. I'm not going to close them all though, because I have more commands regarding this. So we did our split screen. We did our horizontal split screen. I need to click in the window. Switch between screens, Control A tab. I already discussed that. And eliminate a split window. I did it. I don't think I explained it though. If you do Control A capital X, it gets rid of one of those sections of split window. So, when I was over here, when I did Control A pipe, and I could do Control A tab to get over there. Oh, Control A tab. If I want to get rid of that window, if I do Control A capital X, it gets rid of that split window. So if I do Control A capital X again, it leaves just the upper window. So you can manipulate those.
One more question.
Absolutely.
When you create a new shell, is it always your default shell that gets started, or can you force a window to start with a different shell?
It by default opens with your default shell, which of course makes sense. I believe you can. I don't know how though. So I think the answer is yes, you can open it with a different shell, but unfortunately, I don't know how to do that off the top of my head. If I have time afterwards, maybe I'll look at that, like in the end when we have questions, maybe I'll take another look at it. But I'm going to say I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't know how to do it off the top of my head.
Gotcha.
Fair enough?
Just type CS8 and you will be switched to C shell.
Well, yes, once you're in the shell, you
Yeah.
can switch to another shell. I'm thinking of opening it up natively without it being within a bash shell, which is my default on this. And like I say, I think there might be a way to do that, but I can't recall what it is. I'll look into that later, though.
I think you do it with a screen command, but I don't remember it either.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's there, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. So a few other useful items. We can log a session. So if we do Control A-H, what it does is it takes all of the screen output from that point forward and feeds it into a text file. So I'm going to go back over there. So I'm going to do Control A, capital H. And if you look at the top, it says creating log file screen log.0. So now we could do ls, we could do ls-l. Let's do this. So we'll do a few things there. And I'm going to hit Control A, capital H again. And it says screen file log file screen log.0 closed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do less screen log.0. And we're going to see it's going to show there's a few control characters in there because of the bash shell. But you can see it shows our ls command executed. And then it shows our cat CPU proc info, and it's got all the output of that, output to a text file. So if you know you're going to be running a few things that are, I forgot there's only 4 CPUs on this. If you're going to be running a few commands and you want to save all the output of all of those commands, instead of piping them all subsequently into a single file, you can have one file created with this, and it makes life a little bit simpler. Now, if you have stuff on your screen, say you just did this and you say, oh, I'd really like a screen capture of this, and it's inconvenient to do it from your host or you're sitting at a console or something like that, where you can't just grab it so easily, there's another command, Control A lowercase h, takes a screenshot of exactly what's on the screen right now and just encapsulates that to a file. So let's clear. Let's do a say we want all of that. If I do Control A lowercase h, it's going to say creating screen capture. Screen image written to hard copy.0. Sorry, I didn't know it quoted exactly. So now, if we were to clear this and we were to do more hard copy.0, Now we have a text file with exactly what was on the screen at the time we hit that key. So you basically get a text screenshot. And in fact, it even includes the space because it says more down there, 99%. So it's actually capturing all the space on the screen. So if the spacing is important, that's in there as well. But that's a regular text file of everything that was on your screen at that moment. You know, sometimes you run something and you don't want to run it a second time to get the output. You can get a quick screenshot of that. Go
Mr.
back to my slides.
Mr. Murphy, one more.
Sure.
Does your Emacs oriented Screen RC use Emacs style bindings to split windows?
It does not by default, and many Emacs users do not like the fact that it uses Control A as its command sequence. You can very easily change your Screen RC to remap that key to whatever is convenient for you. And I'm going to get to that towards the end. I talk about Screen RC a little bit later. But as far as I know, I mean, he would know better than I just explained all of the screen keys. I'm not an Emacs user. And I'm sorry, please don't quit my presentation because I don't use Emacs. I generally use VI or something graphical. But I don't use Emacs regularly, so I don't know how they do their split screens. If it's Control A, capital S, and Control A pipe, then maybe it does use the same keys. Maybe we could discuss that after we get past the Screen RC stuff. We can look back and take a look at that as well.
Sounds good. That question was for Neil Cherry. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
Neil, remind me later when I get to the
Okay.
end and I have questions. That'll be an
Are you
excellent thing,
there?
and we can.
Can you hear
What's
me?
that? I can.
It looks to me like you're just playing a bunch of games with numbers and so forth. What kind of a program is this?
It's a terminal multiplexer. It lets you use your single SSH or single console session a little more efficiently.
It's just you're playing a bunch of games with numbers and letters.
Well, that's kind of all that computers do.
What use is this?
It's to make a single SSH or a single console session work better and easier.
I signed on this onto this to maybe get some use out of it, but there's no use for so far.
You know, there's a ton.
Are you logging into console sessions or SSH sessions into other computers on a regular basis?
I don't know what I'm logging into. I logged into what the email.
Well, this is more a tool if you're logging in remotely into
Hello.
a Linux or a Mac OS X machine, or using WSL in Windows, where you're in a terminal a lot of the time, and this makes your terminal sessions more productive and easier. If you're not doing those things, this is going to be a little less useful for you.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing that you've put out here now that's any useful to me. It's just a bunch of gibberish.
I apologize for that. It is a program that has a very specific function, so it may not apply to everybody that that's using a computer. If you're logging into a Windows machine and you're primarily using GUI applications, this particular program may not be as useful for you.
When I log into Windows, I go to my email or go to a browser and I look for things and so forth. But this is a bunch of gibberish.
All right.
Well, if you don't use a terminal on a regular basis, this may not be a useful thing for you. I apologize for that, but that's not every tool does everything for everybody, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off then.
Okay.
Okay. Goodbye.
Okay. All right. I'm going to continue.
Sounds good.
So if you want to lock your screen session, now this is one of the reasons that this program was installed on some more computers initially. It basically lets you lock a session. Now for SSH, if we do Control A, lowercase x, it locks our session. Now for SSH, this is a little less useful. So nobody can just walk by and hijack your session unless you leave your computer unlocked, which, you might lock your computer. But where that's really useful is if you're in a server room and you're logged into the console of the machine and you want to walk away for a minute, you need to go to another rack or you need to do something, you don't want to leave your session logged in as you running on a machine that's open to the world where anybody could walk by. You can lock your session, and then if somebody doesn't have the password for that user, they won't be able to get into your machine. Now, I guess if you left your machine unlocked and you had an SSH session open, you could lock that as well. But if you leave your workstation open, it seems like your security practices are a little iffy on top of that anyway. So let's move on, but that's really handy if you're at the console of a real machine or you're logged into the VMware or VirtualBox console and you don't want to close it, but you want to walk away so somebody else can't hijack your session. We can get a list of all of the active windows within Screen and choose between them with Control-A double quotes. So this is neat. And then, you know what? I'm going to talk about the other function first. We can also name the current screen so that the previous function is much easier to use. So let me go over here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do Control-A double quotes. And unfortunately, because I haven't named these, this isn't a very meaningful menu selection. These are all the same thing. But if we go through and name them, so we do Control-A, capital A, and we'll call this one shell. Let's go to the next one. We'll do Control-A, capital A, Midnight Commander. Do Control-A, Control-A-N. We'll just do dev. We're going to do Control-A, capital A, dev. We'll go to the next one. Control-A, capital A, IRC. Go to the next one. So if this is something you need to come back to on a repeated basis, I'll leave that one the way it is. We'll do Control-A-N. Oh, we don't have our top. Let's do Control-A previous. We'll do Control-A, capital A, H-top. So now, if you were flipping between a lot of these a whole bunch of times and you need a better reference, now when we look at that list, we've got a nice, useful selection to choose from. So we can go to IRC, or we can go to Midnight Commander through a nice semi-graphical menu there. I never do this. I always end up with just 100 shell issues. Yes.
Is there a way to save those configurations so you can come back to them 6 months from now and have the same sort of basic setup? Because there's a fair amount of work to just do what you just did.
Right. What you can do is you can set it up in your Screen RC file, which I'm going to demonstrate in a slide or two. Fair enough?
Cool.
Okay, so I'm getting to that in a minute. So there is a way to do that. I'm going to get to it. Watch, it'll be the next slide because I don't remember what the next slide is. No, we're going to do cut and paste first, and then we'll get to the Screen RC stuff. So I found this later on. I actually added this to the presentation partway through. There's a cut and paste function within Screen, which is super useful in certain circumstances where you're constrained. I've been at the console at a term, in front of a real machine or using a VMware console where cut and paste isn't so easy on it. There is a cut and paste function within Screen, which is super useful. So we start copy mode with Control-A and the left square bracket. That puts us into copy mode. Then you use the cursor keys throughout the whole scroll buffer, and you go to the beginning of what you'd like to copy, hit space, use the cursor keys to go to the end, hit space again. Now everything in that block is now in your buffer. Now you can go navigate away from that, edit a file, do whatever you need to do. And then when you do Control-A right square bracket, it then pastes everything into the buffer into where you currently are, which is super useful. Let me go back here. So let's say we do get something like one of those big long UUIDs, and we need to put that in somewhere. You could use, you could be having to, we had one point where our boot partition was assigned by name, and we needed to change them to the UUID. Now, of course, who wants to write down or somehow get that UUID copied out? What we want to do is, so I'm going to do Control A, left square bracket. That puts us in copy mode. What I'm going to do is I'll go up here. I'll hit space, cursor over. So we get that whole UUID string. And I'm going to hit space again. So now I'm going to do, now if I go to edit this file, say I need to add this in. Oh, look, I already have a bad one in here. I am going to make it a comment as well. So say I want to do this. Now if I hit Control A, right square bracket, it puts that UUID in there. I didn't realize I used the same one. So we'll do alternate boot. So now I was able to copy and paste that without having the mouse, without having a graphical environment on top of it. Makes it much easier to go in, and I am going to save that. So now we've managed to add that in without, now it just happened that it was on the same page. It would be easy to just cut and paste it. But if that was something that you need to get with this program and then get that into your other file, this makes it a heck of a lot easier. So that's a pretty handy feature. Oh, complex IDs when you're in the middle and you don't have easy mouse-based cut and paste. Okay, now to answer the other question from before. So you can also set up what's called a screen RC file, which gives parameters to screen when it starts up as to how it's going to work. Now, I copied this off the internet. So this string here, I know this adds in a bunch of information on the bottom, like time and date and what applications are running. I cannot translate exactly where all that came from, though. So that was sort of stolen off the internet. Everything else I set up where you could set your first session to bash, your second session to, and we give it a name. The name is files, and it's Midnight Commander. And we have another one where we call it perf, and it's got top running. So then the hard status always comes on the bottom line, and that's this mess of gobbledygook here. But I'm going to show you that in practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to exit out of here. I'm going to exit out of screen. I'm going to SSH in again as a different user that has that in its screen RC. Okay, so now when we do screen, it's going to run the screen RC that we have over here. Oh, if you're looking for example files, by the way, there is usually an Etsy screen RC file, or, and I don't understand why this is the case, an Etsy screen RC. I don't know why it was named that. Maybe there's a conflict at some point. But in any case, so when we run screen, you're going to see everything that was run in that screen RC file. There we go. So as we go along, you can see we have 4 screen sessions open. We have a shell, we have files, we have performance, and we have IRC. So our IRC session is here. I'm going to do Control A, P, and you can see the parentheses move back to the perf line. So it shows us which one we're in currently. Control A, P again brings us to a shell with Midnight Commander. And if I do previous again, it brings us to a regular shell. So this gives us, and you can see down here, we have the host name, which is convenient when you're working on a lot of machines, and it's got the time and the date down here. And that was all part of that screen RC file.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so Ray Bloom asked, you mentioned needing setting an environment variable to get screen running in WSL2, but he seems to having a problem. So when I tried to run curl, I get cannot find configuration. This file is probably executed from the wrong location. So it says it's running fine, but except for that one thing.
So curl is not getting an existing file. See, Screen shouldn't interfere. So he already installed Screen and curl isn't working?
That's correct. Only under screen.
Okay. And that's under WSL under Windows?
WSL2, yeah. But I don't know about the environment variable you were referring to.
Yeah, and you know what? Unfortunately, I didn't document that when I got it working at one point in the past. So you may have to poke around because that was part of, I'm surprised. That's the only thing that doesn't work because I think it didn't even start for me unless I set those environment variables. So
Yes,
unfortunately,
I just tried to do the curl to your irssi.org, and that's how I came across the failure.
oh, okay. Well, that's not my page. That's just an application.
No, but it's curl not operating correctly in that environment. for some
Oh,
reason.
okay. Okay.
I mean,
I'm glad maybe.
the curl executable is visible because I was able to check it, but when it executes, there's something not right about the screen environment. Sorry. Anyway, back to you.
Okay. Unfortunately, under Windows, I can't help you off the top of my head with that because I'm not even on a Windows machine. I can't even poke around and try to get that for you. So I don't have all the answers for that one.
Yeah, it's probably something to do with the home directory, because the home directory in Windows is completely different.
Yeah, I think that might have been part of it.
No.
So let me just go through, let me tell you a couple of things that I found here, and I was just going to open it up to questions anyway. So my main sources I got the information for this from, the GNU Screen man pages were very good. I used Linode, had a very nice page on managing terminal sessions with Screen, and a site called Aperiodic had a really nice recap of all the key bindings. So if you want to contact me after the session, you can get me via email at murph@member.fsf.org or on the Fediverse at murph@fosstodon.org. And now we'll go back to questions. So yeah, unfortunately, the WSL thing, like I say, there was a page I went through to get it working correctly, and it was just a couple of environment variables, and then you restart Screen and it works. But I didn't jot that down, unfortunately. Any other questions? I can ask and answer a question that's been very popular in the past. I've had people say, how come you don't use Tmux? Tmux is better, Screen is old and nasty, and nobody should ever use it. Why aren't you using Tmux? And my answer to that is, Tmux is a wonderful utility. It does most of the things that Screen does, and Screen does most of the things that Tmux does. They're both good programs. Whichever one works better for you, that's the one you should use. But Screen is a wonderful program. It was installed, and part of the reason I use that instead of starting with Tmux is it was already installed on all of our production servers where I work. So to make a change from Screen to Tmux, in that case, didn't make sense because Screen fulfilled everything we needed and didn't tax anything. So it worked out well. If you have Tmux and use Tmux, all of the things that I've shown that you can do in Screen, you can do in Tmux. There are a few edge cases on both of them. Tmux does things like it can save your split screens a little bit better than this. This doesn't save that information from you if you exit and go back in, where Tmux will do that. Screen, if you're dealing with serial terminals at all, if you're doing something like using a serial port to get into a Cisco router or something, Screen has a lot of accommodations for that and has a lot of ways you can connect to things with that I don't believe Tmux does at all. So there are different things that both programs do, but everything I've done here you can do in Tmux. It's just the keystrokes are different. Their main key to control things is Control B and then your command, and that makes Emacs people happy because Control A is used for stuff in Emacs, from what I understand.
I just switched
So,
to Control U.
What's that?
I switched it to Control U. Screen is now using Control U.
Hey, Screen can use whatever makes you happy. So if Control U makes you happy, you can set your Screen RC to change it to that keystroke.
Yeah, I've got several screen RCs for different setups.
Yeah, that's something you can do. I didn't mention that. So generally, there's one canonical screen RC that goes if you don't specify anything. But if you have different screen RC parameters that you need for different machines, you can tell Screen to start with a particular screen RC file that suits your environment better. So for whatever your purpose is, you can start a different screens, a different set of startup parameters for Screen that works for you. Thank you for mentioning that. I forgot to say that.
This is not a screen question, but I'm wondering if Midnight
Okay.
Commander can be used to rsync.
I know it does FTP. I know it's very flexible. I don't know if you could say, go into Midnight Commander, let's see.
Pick a directory on the left, pick a
select
directory
a
on the
few
right, and
things.
sync them.
Yeah, I don't know if it works like that. Be cool if it did,
Okay.
though.
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking, it's like, that'd be really useful. I should see if I could figure out how to make that happen. So I don't recall ever seeing rsync explicitly called out, but then I certainly haven't trawled through all of the Midnight Commander direction, all the man pages either. So maybe, don't recall ever seeing it, but boy, does that sound like a useful function.
Yeah. Okay. I remember Norton Commander from years and years ago, and I have some rsync type problems. I'm just wanting to do it.
Yeah, there's lots of things that are handy to do from a command line, like if you're copying files or rsyncing files. But if you're going through a directory of MP3s and you say, select everything from my road trip, that's really hard to regex, where you could sort of go down a list of things and select them as you go, and you know what you like.
Oh, yeah.
So, there are, I don't do a lot of stuff in Midnight Commander, but I really like having it there for those situations where I just want to look at a list of stuff and pick a few things out. That's hard to do, programmatically sometimes. And when I first started with Linux back in the mid 90s, I was using Slackware, and at the time I was doing a lot of stuff with DOS in my day job. And when I found Midnight Commander, having used Norton Commander back in DOS, I said, boy, is this a useful utility. This was one of my go-to utilities for many, many years.
Oh,
Handy
yeah.
stuff to have around. Other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, sure thing. Anybody with other questions? I'm happy to entertain anything you got.
Can you look at this chat question? Neil's posted it, but I don't want to
sure.
butcher it. I don't want to butcher it. That's all.
Yeah, let me stop sharing and then and come back. Wow, there's a lot of messages in the chat.
Yeah. It's the one by Neil. It says, "Is there a way to get the name set?" And I just want
to correspond with what's shown in Screen LS. Oh, you're looking at two different things. Screen LS is all of the different screen sessions that are running. You can start more than one screen session on the same machine. When you look at Control A apostrophe, double apostrophe, you are looking at the windows within one single screen session. So I would say the answer is probably no, because, pardon me. The answer is probably no, because you are looking at two distinctly different things. Let me see if I can share my screen again and demonstrate. Oh, again, I've got the chat in the middle here. Okay, so if I do Control A apostrophe, I am looking at the individual windows within that single screen session. But if I do Control A D, so I'm going to detach, and I'm going to do Screen -S, second screen. What we've done is, look at that, this one's running this as well. So what we've got is now we've got two separate screen sessions. Each of them have a set of windows attached to them. When we do, and I'm going to detach from this one now, so now we've got two separate screen sessions. When I do LS, no, not LS, Screen -LS, we are looking at the two individual screen sessions. We're not looking at individual windows. Let me unshare again. So I don't know, did that answer your question, Neil? Yeah, I was looking at one of your chat questions.
I think he posted the same one, but
Oh, okay.
yeah. I just wanted to make sure and let you finish.
Yeah. Neil, was that the question you wanted me to answer? The one about screen LS up there? If I screen LS and then screen -R, can I get back to a specific window? I'm thinking no. I don't know if there's a way to get to a certain window within that. Again, that's another one of those ones, if I dug far enough into the documentation, maybe, but I don't recall ever seeing it. So I'm thinking that's less likely. So sorry to disappoint on that. You're asking good questions. Well, I like questions I know the answers to better, but they're good questions nonetheless. Oh, as far as lowercase r versus uppercase R, there's actually a neat little trick to that. If you want to reconnect to a session that hasn't been disconnected, you can do -RD. And if that session will not disconnect properly, you can do R, capital D. So it's kind of like you're turning on caps lock and yelling at it, saying really disconnect and really reconnect. And sometimes it'll work. It depends upon how it detaches. Again, if you just slam your laptop closed, sometimes screen doesn't understand that you've really gone away. You might have just like dropped temporarily and you're coming back, so it doesn't let you reattach to it. But if you start capitalizing the R's and the D's, it actually gets more persuasive in how it persuasive on how it disconnects and reconnects to a particular session. I think the specific window is -PN where named window. Wonder if it works. Oh, maybe. Haven't had a chance to try it. Now I'm gonna. The Screen Man page is 100 pages long. I'm not surprised. Like I say, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I think that was the only one that I didn't. Everything else, I'm pretty sure we've answered throughout. We still have 3 more minutes, so.
3 more minutes? Oh, I thought there was a lot more time, so that was good.
3:30.
Any other questions? I'm happy to entertain another couple of minutes here. Okay, if there's no other questions, Yuri, thank you for running the room and keeping things in order here and asking questions while